One's ready. Go!
Hey everybody, so welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. Here's what we're going to do is I'm hopping on an Aspect War Discord Fireside chat. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to give it a shot and we'll go from there. Whiskey Mo, have I got this thing on right?
Sorry for the delay, everyone. My computer decided to restart right as I was getting everything set up. Pitches, there should be a button that you can hit to come up on stage with me.
Dude, I feel inadequate right now because I should have downloaded Discord on my laptop.
Yeah, it's all right. We don't always have people with video or anything fancy like that, so it's no big deal.
Do you just go through your server or like just through the website, like Chrome or something?
I use the Discord app on my PC, but I think you can do it through Chrome as well.
Okay. All right. Let me see. We'll go through the phone right now, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect.
And then maybe I'll switch.
Yeah. This is a special edition. We're not recording this tonight, y'all. This is going to be just a special one for everyone who makes it in today.
Well, if it's all good with you, I'm gonna record from my end, and I'm gonna repost it on YouTube and audio. That way, anybody that missed it can check it out.
That's what we usually end up doing, but my machine's giving me a hard time right now, so it wasn't letting me record. So that's actually perfect, Peaches.
Cool. Sweet.
So instead of being on my channel for video, it'll be on theirs. So cool.
Yeah, we'll go through it, man.
Awesome. Well, let me go ahead and get this event started. Get everyone pinged.
Yeah, this is a bit different than the normal kind of voice chat thing, huh?
Yeah, the thing with the voice chat is that anyone can talk at any time. With this, they can chat in the text chat, but they have to actually hit a button to be invited up to speak. That way we don't step on all over each other. And this has a bigger audience. We can fit more people in here.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Looks like everyone's starting to rush in, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, everybody! Thanks for coming to today's question and answer session that we've been doing. I think we're on month 4 of this right now. And today, for everyone who may not know me, Whiskey Mo, my name is Morgan Houston. I am a former TACP, long time ago. As Peaches once called me, the Discord dad. So I'm putting him on that. But today we have Jared Peaches. I think I said that right. Peaches?
That's right. Peaches.
All right. Perfect. And you all know him. You all love him. He is one of the 3 co-hosts of the ONESREADY podcast, which also, small plug, episode 286. Go see mine.
Of course. You definitely should check it out because you're one hell of a historian.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, luckily that's done well for me, and I've got some projects in the work with some of your other guests that are working right now that we can't really talk about. So, super cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I did just want to say before we get started, congrats on retirement. I think we've talked over Instagram, or I sent you congrats, but officially congrats on retirement, man.
Thank you. It's a weird feeling, honestly. I'm still not used to it yet.
I didn't even take terminal leave when I got out. I just ended, and it was super weird.
Yeah, could I have done it better? For sure. I wish I was able to take, skill bridge and all that kind of stuff, but being in a one deep shop, I just wasn't afforded that opportunity, which is fine. And but I was able to take terminal, so it's good.
So what's next? Other than ONESREADY, you got anything spectacular that you got going on? Anything planned?
So we've got ONESREADY. We've been doing some events around the continental U.S. right now. We've done 2 of them so far: Las Vegas and Orlando, and we're trying to forecast the next 5 events. So places like San Diego, Dallas, Denver, Nashville, that kind of stuff. So we're just trying to plug in the locations and the time frame so that people can come out. And the whole point of those is they're not like smoke sessions or anything like that. And they're more of instructorship, mentorship for folks to learn, you know, the correct and efficient things to do in the pool, especially when it comes to some of the more stressful events like underwaters, mask and snorkel, buddy breathing, that kind of stuff. So it's good, and it's been very rewarding because we get people that are either new to Air Force Special Warfare or they want to go be a SEAL or a Ranger or stuff like that, and it's really, it brings the instructor out of me, which is really nice because you get to see the kind of light bulb go off, and it's something special.
When you guys do Denver, give me a heads up. I'm only 4 hours away.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be great. But so other than that, yeah, I am starting a new job here in like a week or so. So the content may just slow down a little bit, but we'll still try, and maybe it'll be more quality over quantity, which is we're big fans of.
Y'all are pretty prolific anyways, man. It's not like you guys aren't pumping stuff out anyways.
Yeah, and it's a balance. Is it too much? And I don't mean too much as in like, are we losing the quality with it? Like it's one of those things where your own worst critique or critic, and I'm always going to critique the ever living shit out of myself.
That's fair, man. I'm the same way. So yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows a little bit about you just because of your place on ONESREADY, and plus if you guys haven't watched the episode that Peaches and Trent did about kind of like to wrap up his career, go watch it. That was awesome. But if you wouldn't mind, Peaches, giving us a quick little overview of your combat control career.
Sure. I came in August of 1999. I was 17 years old. I originally wanted to be a PJ because I didn't, the recruiter I saw, and there was no, YouTube or anything like that. So all I knew and all the recruiter knew was pararescue. So I came into the Air Force. I trained beforehand once I figured out what I wanted to do and what the requirements were for the pass test at the time, which was, 500-meter swim, 2 underwaters, a mile and a half run, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups kind of thing. I don't remember what the minimum standards were, but so I trained for a couple months for that, and I was in the delayed entry program, and then left in August. And then when I got to NDOC, because at the time controllers and PJs were going through NDOC together at the same time, and so during Hell Week, as part of the kind of thing to make you stay awake, is they put us in a classroom, and there was a controller that's like, because the whole class was basically PJs. There was a couple Stowe candidates. There was maybe 2 or 3 CCT, and they were kind of canvassing the students or the cones, and they said, "Hey, who has heard about combat control?" And hardly anybody raised their hand. And so one of the instructors got up. He brought in radios, brought in airfield lights, and he was a prior tier 1 guy. And so he was talking about all the stuff that he had done. And then they said, back then it was a little bit easier because they're like, all right, we can swap everybody's AFSCs right now, or Air Force specialty codes. And so they said, all right, now that you know what a combat controller is and does, who wants to swap over? And there was a bunch of people that just raised their hands like, hey, swap our AFSC, because we didn't know. So that's kind of how that happened. And then I ended up being on 3 teams at NDOC, departing NDOC, going to air traffic control school. And while I was at air traffic control school, they changed the pipeline around, and controllers left NDOC and started the new, what is now known as Special Tactics Training Squadron and Advanced Skills Training. So I was team 1 going through advanced skills training at Herbie. So did that. 9/11 happened. We helped the 23rd out of Hurlburt Field, rip out the door. And then we were really hoping that we were going to get a chance to go too, but we didn't get picked because we weren't really qualified. But I would make the argument that the best place to learn how to do anything is to deploy. But so ended up going to the 2-1 out of Pope Air Force Base at the time. Now it's Army Airfield out in North Carolina. And then went over to Afghanistan in 02, and then came back for about a month, and then went right into the invasion of Iraq. And then from there, came back from Iraq, went over to England. I spent 8 years over at the 321st, deploying out of there as well. Left England in 11 and came to Nellis, to the weapons school, where me and a couple other guys stood up the JTAC weapons instructor course. So the first enlisted dudes to do that, to go through the weapons school.
The legends that set up the weapons school?
Well, not me, but your Dave Bickles, your Mike Smiths, your Brian Pattons, and Adam Veazey's and Tom Schaefer's. Yeah, those legends. So we did that, and I stayed on as an instructor for about 4.5 years, and then did a bunch of quick stops at the 23rd STS at Herbie. Then I went to SOCOM headquarters in Tampa. Then I went to the 22nd up at JBLM up in Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, and then finished off my career back at the weapons school as the chief of the weapons school, and just retired. What is the 15th? So 15 days ago. That's it. That's me in a nutshell, man.
That's well. For me, what's wild is like we were 2 ships passing the night in so many places, right? Like I joined in August of 2000, and I went straight to air traffic control school, where I raised my hand and said I want to be a combat controller. And then like I was one of the first ones to go through the CCT orientation course. I think I was at combat control school when you were at the 2-1. It's like we were just like passing. We were all over the place together. That's wild, man.
And that happens, that, man. You've been in long enough, or at the time, you pass, you hear people's names, but you never actually end up meeting somebody just because your ship's passing at the night.
Well, that's the crazy thing too, is so many people you end up knowing, and that's why it's like you can't like fake it.
Yeah.
In this community, right? Because everybody knows that, like Mike Smith and I were in Italy together. That dude, that crazy guy who's getting ready to retire. Like Tommy Schaefer and I knew each other. It's like it's all these things. Like we've met at other times, and we're like, "What's going on, man?" It's like, how do you know this guy? So, but yeah, cool, man. I appreciate that. Before I open it up to the group for questions, real quick, fun one. What's your most favorite moment that you had in your career?
Oh man,
big one, right?
Favorite moment. I'd say the first firefight we got in, and the first time I got the drop ordnance. And the reason why is because you spend all this time training and always wondering, like, how am I going to react, and how am I going to be good at my job? All this training I've done, all the sacrifice and the blood, sweat, and tears. Am I going to perform like I hope I am? Am I going to perform like all of these badasses before me, or my peers? And kind of getting that validation and going like, oh yeah, I am good at my job. I'm performing exactly like they are. Like, all right, cool. I'm worthy, kind of thing. The unfortunate part about this, and you probably know this, is that it never goes away. Like, you never think you're good enough. It's never enough. You get that quick hit of validation going like, dude, I crushed that. And then give it a couple months and you're like, man, do I still have it? Am I slipping? Am I getting complacent? It's just, it's never ending.
Well, and like in that time, like the early 2000s, right? Because like my stuff was the same thing. Same first time I dropped ordnance, and it's just like, but then you hear the stories, right, of all the dudes doing badass things, and you're just like, imposter syndrome's gonna hit me, But yeah, I get that.
Yep. Yeah, it's a real thing, which sucks because you're sitting, and I look at my my quote unquote persona. Like I'm hesitant to use the word persona because that would make it seem like I'm not actually who I am. But we've got enough hours of content, and I've had enough conversations with people that like everything you see online is exactly the person I am. And you would think that like, holy shit, of course this guy knows that he's got, yeah, I know I'm going to be fine. Like if there's a bad situation, I'll make it through. But there's still that kind of like, what if I'm not? What if I'm out of shape? Or what if I haven't gone to the range and I haven't shot in a while and I'm rusty and I need to, it's always there.
It is. It never goes away, and it doesn't matter what field it is. Like I experience it now, even in my own work now, it is completely separate. So it's always still there. But I think that's what pushes us to be better.
Yep.
Is that feeling of inadequacy?
Yeah, 100%. So, I'm not begrudging that sense of inadequacy. Like I use it to try and stay sharp.
For sure. Put it out there, guys. If you guys have questions for Peaches, go ahead and you can either hit the button up top that's got a little hand. You can raise your hand, you come up here to speak, or you can put it over there in the chat and we can go from there. If not, I do have some more questions, but I'd like to open it up for y'all before we start rolling into my super nerdy TACP CCT questions. So go ahead, ask away. So thanks again, though, Peaches, for joining us. This is awesome. One of those, I've been trying to get people to come in every month, so this is going to be great.
No, this is good. I just found the chat. So yeah, exactly. Who is going to curry the goats? That's what I want to know.
I don't know how that evolved to where it is here. Like that's the thing is like who's gonna curry the goats.
Oh, dude, so Aaron and I, we're in England together, and if you have been to the UK or Middle East, like curry's, it's fantastic. It's amazing. If you have a curry in your town and you've never been, go get a curry. Go get a chicken tikka masala with some garlic naan bread. Oh, it's glorious, right? So I like David Goggins, but it is still fun to pick on him and who's going to carry the boat. So who's going to curry the goats? It just plays well.
Man, that's a big block there, Blackjack. Hold on. I'm just going to read this verbatim for you, Peaches. Question from the leadership perspective. It recently came to my attention from a close friend of mine whose sons were in the military. One was a Marine Corps EOD, the other was a Marine Corps MP, then switched to Air Force Security Forces. She told me she'd seen her son's career before they both retired put on hold essentially because of toxic leadership, and because of that have expressed she believes it would be better if I decide to go for the Crow career field to both make a bigger impact in the field, but also to avoid toxic leadership. From your experience, have you ever seen that kind of toxicity in aspect war where somebody's ego stops junior enlisted from progressing? Let them know if it makes sense. I think it makes somewhat sense.
Yeah. So there's a couple different parts of that question. Nobody, whether you're an officer or enlisted, is immune from toxic leadership, right? Because unless you are the chairman there, and even then the chairman still has a boss, right? So you anywhere you work, whether you're an enlisted officer or you're in a civilian sector, you always run the risk of toxic leadership. So you can never get away from it, except for leave the organization. Now, I would say 98% of the people that you will work with in Air Force Special Warfare are solid, do anything for you. That's, that whatever I said, 98%, so the 2% out there, and that's on the enlisted and the officer side, could be considered toxic, are not great people, or you can get super frustrated with it. And like, I'll give you an example, right? Without giving names and all that kind of stuff. And so, I had a commander that no matter what, like this was for Operation Odyssey Dawn with Libya, if I remember right. So I was prepping all kinds of stuff in terms of all these airfields, like from back in England, prepping all these airfields, prepping all these HLZs in country and out of country, because we had CV-22s that had never done anything operationally at that point, and we needed places to train. So I'm doing all this kind of stuff, and I'm prepping and everything like that, and sending all this stuff through the group and the wing and all that kind of stuff. And it didn't matter whether it was me or whether it was a legend like Bill Adams, who I know that people aren't going to know it, but Aaron is on here and he'll know exactly who I'm talking about. Bill Adams is one of, when you work with an operator that you're like, dude, this guy is who I want to be when I grow up. Like, he is one of those, right? And even this commander still would not listen to him, because he's like, man, he struggles, and he's still serving. He struggles with taking input from enlisted people. And so, to your question, Blackjack, I think that you could make the argument, who makes more of an impact, enlisted or officer. I think both do, right? Your tacticians, your people who, like, I heard a good one, and I've always struggled to articulate it, right? But officers are in command, enlisted are in control. Okay, we are the enlisted are the tacticians. So if you want to do the job and do the mission, you need to go enlisted. If you want to do the job for 3 to 4 years and then transition to a leadership role, then you go officer. The other option is you can go enlisted, do that for 10 or 12 years, and then transfer in to be an officer. And then you still get, the officer paycheck, you still get to lead people. That also means that enlisted are leading people as well. We're still non-commissioned officers and senior non-commissioned officers. So, but there's toxicity everywhere. I'd say that there's less, especially when I peruse the Airman NCO and Senior NCO Facebook page. There is a lot less toxicity in Air Force Special Warfare than there is in the rest of the Air Force. Just my 2 cents. Probably long-winded though.
I would also add on to that, like, especially on the TACP side, ever since we've gotten TACPOs, the toxicity level has dropped, right? Because for so long we didn't have any kind of officer representation, and I'm sure it's probably somewhat similar on the PJ side of the house too. We had so many fighter pilot commanders who would just say, it was very similar. They really struggled taking input from the enlisted side, and especially early in the 2000s when we were still transitioning from the ETAC to the JTAC. I mean, the JTAC mission set as an enlisted guy is still only like 30 years old. It's still pretty new. So it was a big struggle. So it's gotten better, I think, as more and more officers come into to our side. They're not immune to it, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was a great move on the side of the TACPs to bring in its own officers, because and that's not to take away anything away from the great officers that came over from, F-16s, A-10s, B-52s and stuff like that. But the problem is that you struggle to connect with the men that went through and what they've been through and what they're asking for, because you never went through it. And it's not your fault you never went through it. At the same time, there were also those officers that you probably experienced that they didn't want to leave the cockpit. They were pissed that they had to be there, and they're like, dude, I'm just doing my time and I'm getting the hell out of here so I can go fly again. And that's not good for a commander to be like that.
No, not at all. That was tough.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question from Fanny Pack Enthusiast. I'm not exactly sure how to answer this. I know I have somewhat answer, but I'm going to have you as well. So Fanny Pack has just recently started learning about antenna theory from his last course. Given radios and comms can be wonky to get up and running, do you have a memorable setup that you put together that was just whack, but it worked?
I don't like the wackiest thing I would say would be shooting SATCOM, right? And which is not really a wacky setup, but in Africa, we would have these they weren't government, they were government contract CASA 212s that we would fly all over Africa in. Like, they belonged to us. They would, there was a company I'll just say Blackwater, we were flying on their birds. And no kidding, we would refuel in air using 55-gallon drums and a hand crank that we had strapped in the back. So whenever, we're flying over Africa, and sometimes there's thousands of miles of just nothing desert. And so, they're like, hey, we need some fuel, just stop, so I'm just back there like hand cranking to refuel us, right? And then hanging out the back of the ramp and having them kind of do a rudder turn to get, so I could hang out the ramp and point the SATCOM antenna in the right direction just to make comms. So that's probably the wackiest kind of setup I had. But man, like, I did HF and stuff like that a long time ago, but not at the level that TACPs did. So I'd say that's probably more on you than me.
I had to braid a wire. So we have a pallet of radios in our Hummers we had 8 radios on there: HF, UHF, VHF, SINGARs, SATCOM, and I know I'm missing it. No, we'd have, yeah. So it was like all these, and we'd have to route it through a thing. So like at one point, I had to slice open a cable and braid it to get it to work, and it was just pretty like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
This go right, but then you also get to try and test things that you did. So like when we were in Kuwait after my second Iraq deployment, we built an HF antenna. And we got back. There's still to this day, I think it's in Stuttgart, an old school phone switch. So like they can do but they can take HF comms. So like you do the angles and the math. We bounce it off the atmosphere, off the med, off the atmosphere, in there, and everyone was able to do phone patches to their family back in the States.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so but you had to get them to stay over when they were done talking, so the operator could pull the thing and switch like back in the day.
Dude, that's really cool that the operators were willing to do that.
They were totally cool. I mean, this was in March of 04. So like everyone was on like, we're gonna help you talk to your family, man.
Yeah, America. Now that's so to Fanny Pack's point too. There is kind of a cool thing that some of the squadrons will do, and it's not controllers or TACPs or anything like that doing it. It's the comms folks that we have with us. They actually hold competitions all around the world for doing, and it's all HF. And I went to 2 of them because I was the chief of the 2-2. And so our comm shop would compete in these and do very well. But they'd make these Wazoo antennas, HF antennas, and just ping Hawaii, Philippines, Singapore, like just all around the world doing HF stuff. And it was kind of interesting. Like there's a lot of science behind it.
HF super cool.
Yeah. It's going to be the future, probably.
It's gonna work, right? It's the one thing that will work.
Yeah.
All right. So from Ego, question about SR. Trent jokes about SR being absorbed, but at other times says that it was shaped for what the future of warfare might look like. This seems to reflect what people in online communities say. Some say it's going to become obsolete. Some say that it's doing great and on track to be very relevant. What seems to be the direction that you think it's going to take?
It's tough to say what the Air Force is going to do, right? Because a lot of times the Air Force thinks in a vacuum, and you've heard us be critical of the Air Force and the Air Force leadership and some of the decisions that are made. So sometimes there are decisions and that are poor decisions made in a vacuum, meaning lack of information. They don't go and ask anybody, and it's just a snap decision that somebody makes. Now, yeah, we've joked about absorbing SR just because we like to give folks that are interested in SR and Trent and the SR dudes that listen to us, we just like to give them shit. There's nothing in writing about that. There's no talks about that happening or anything like that. So, but we just laugh because it's like, there's like 75 SR dudes. It'd just be easier to make them controllers, send them to air traffic control school, and then boom. Because controllers do recce as well. So now shaping it for the future of warfare, this kind of goes with what I was saying in terms of if the Air Force makes the right decisions and actually focuses on what it needs to do, SR could be the baddest mother effer on the block. And the reason why is because they have the capability, just like CCT, but more so with SR, have the capability to tie in Space Force and the Air Force. So Space Force is part of the Air Force, Department of the Air Force, right? But like there's an episode that's releasing on Monday with Lieutenant General Deptula, who he's a retired guy now, and but he is wicked smart when it comes to integration of Air Force space assets and that kind of stuff. And like we were kind of talking about, the Navy thinks that they can do everything without the Air Force, Department of the Air Force. The Air Force proper thinks that it can do everything by itself without the Navy. But in reality, neither the Navy, the Air Force, or the Army can do anything without the Space Force. And the Space Force right now is only 3% of the defense budget, just 3%. So, and we, whether you think so or not, we are 100% in a space race right now, and we are losing. The general, when I talked to him yesterday, he couldn't tell me how far behind we are because it's tough to determine what that unit of measure is, but we are rapidly catching up because we need to, and because we're bringing on companies like SpaceX, and we're not solely relying on government contracts and government agencies to do it. There was just a private company out of Texas, I believe, that just landed a lunar module on the moon. Like, that's incredible. And we've got to leverage that kind of stuff to be better. So all that to say, SR 100% has game as long as the Air Force is forward thinking about it and says, hey, instead of just using airborne assets, let me integrate space, let me integrate the ground assets as well, because it's all layered effects. It's not just, hey, I've got F-35s as a strike package, they're going to go forward. No, there's guys on the ground that could help provide command and control, updated targeting locations and stuff like that. So that's what SR will end up doing with the strike help of CCT.
So I'm currently getting another master's degree in global security with a focus on irregular warfare, and I'm researching how information systems works with Air Force specifically and in air power. And there's a lot of conversation in that space about the role of Air Force Special Reconnaissance. There's a paper that we have put that we're going to discuss as a group here in 2 weeks on the 29th about Air Force Special Reconnaissance, both as a doctrine and as a career field. So like that's kind of stuff that we here in the Discord are chatting about. So like I love the idea of having an actual Air Force dedicated special reconnaissance. I think it was way overdue.
Yep.
So
yeah, I agree. And like I said, it's one of those things where the Air Force kind of throttles you back a little bit because they're like, I don't know, man, you guys are a bunch of listed swine. I don't know if we're going to trust you to go out there and do it. But I'll tell you right now, on the unclassified side of the house, there has already been stuff that CCT and SR and TACP have done in that kind of disaggregated forward edge command and control. Like, I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I mean, we had Todd Duquette on a few months back, and he was talking about ISET teams, like the integrated sensing and effects team, and how they're doing like beyond FIBA stuff, and it's like everybody's getting in on it now. It's just they're focusing in their little slice of the pie, and I think there's going to be a lot of really good crosstalk about like best practices, and I think it's just going to get better.
Yep. Yeah, I agree, and it's it's a fledgling career field. Like it's easy to say, oh, they were Saltese and we just swapped names. It was a lot more than that, and the good thing is that Trent was on the kind of forefront of doing all of that writing and all of that work to make that swap. So it wasn't just a badge name and a name change. Like there was a lot more that goes into it. And so there's a lot of authorities and equipment that is still getting procured that they're getting downrange. There's just not very many of them to go around to then train on. And then some of that equipment, you're not allowed to train on it here in the US because it disrupts FAA stuff and that kind of thing. So like the only time we can actually use it is when we are downrange.
Yeah. Sweet. That's a great answer. Thanks. And I'm actually going to ask one. This one has been on my mind for a while, ever since I saw that episode that you guys did with Jimmy Cackler.
Mm-hmm.
And then he reached out to me on Instagram, and we had a conversation. And so I would like to pick your brain about it. What are your thoughts on the idea of like an aspect war unified command, some sort of like group thing together? We put them all together. Because like my thing is that like we're small compared to so many of the other branches, and especially when you talk about like the soft side of the house. So what are your thoughts on like his ideas of a unified command?
I think it would be a good thing for us to be not a MAGCOM, but like a NAF, a numbered Air Force, because we don't have the numbers to make a MAGCOM. Like as I'm thinking about it, it's just aspect war and its support functions, not the aviation side of the house. So I think if you could make a numbered Air Force, that way we have a lot more WASTA than a wing. I think that would be the right answer. And then I would also bring in all the J's from ACC. I'd bring in all the TACPs from ACC. I guess the touchy part about that would be what happens with the combatant commands, like the TACPs and the PJs that are assigned to Europe and PACOM or PACAF. What happens with them? Like, are they loaned out kind of thing? Like I just, we are also so spread so thin that I think that we almost need an East Coast, West Coast as well. Because we could, if you have the 2-2 and the 2-6 on the West Coast, and then you have the 2-1 and the 2-3 on the East Coast, if you combine them, just say there's 150 support personnel at each one of those units. If you combined an East Coast and a West Coast, you wouldn't need 300 support personnel. You'd only need probably 200, because you're just boosting up some of those numbers real quick, and then you could farm out the rest of those people back to their own communities to do whatever. But I think an East Coast, West Coast, and a numbered Air Force would be a better construct, in my opinion.
I actually think it would be the TACP that would be the hard part, because of the conventional nature of most of the TACPs. And then, like you said, we've got a wing, the Air Ground Operations Wing in Europe, and then the groups in PACAF. And it's just, it's so weird. But I think, because one of my biggest things was that I think with the creation of, back in the day, the Battlefield Airmen, and then the move to aspect war, has been one of the better things for TACP, because I think it really kind of brought us more of a sense of, we always kind of viewed ourselves as kind of like the red-headed stepchild. Like, we weren't bad enough to be AFSOC, but we were not Air Force, right?
Right.
But it also brought about, like, I think there's a lot of good exchange between those communities. Like, I think the things that create, like, on the ST side, like those things that are good, they're starting to bleed over to the regular TACP community now. And I think it's just making us better, because like we have a little bit better mindset about it. We view ourselves a little bit differently, and that there's less of that. There's less of the rivalries between the communities, and now it's more of a collaboration, especially as TACP started getting into the 2 series units. Like, I think that's so good for everyone, all the way around.
Yeah, I agree. And the one unit that is all, well, I was gonna say it's not all TACPs anymore. There's controllers over there now as well. But like the guys that support the Rangers, and people can look it up, whatever unit they want to. I just want to keep their numerical thing quiet. But like some of the most professional dudes that exist, and they really phenomenal JTACs, phenomenal operators, and just professional. Like I was just they're amazing to work with. So shout out to TJ Gannell.
Yeah. Well, it's like, because back in the day when that was an ACC unit, like that was still like, they were still the pinnacle for us. Because like back in the early 2000s, there was not really that opportunity unless you're like working in a fire shop as a TACP. So it was like, well, where are you going to go? Well, do I really want to assess for that unit? Because it's like, well, then that's, it's nearly impossible because there's only so many dudes.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys didn't even try. But now there's so many more opportunities for us, and it's awesome. And I think it just brings so much of the best that you guys have in your culture. And I think for some of us bringing it over there's this great exchange. It's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the things that the TACPs may end up finding, and I know it's gone back and forth, and I don't honestly, I don't know where it's at right now, but they're going back and forth right now on whether or not TACP is going to join, SWAS, Special Warfare Assessment and Selection, and go through as, you know, CCT, PJ, SR do, and I think the first one was going to. I think actually the first kind of typees have gone through now. Like they're in this class, if I'm not mistaken. So they're almost as like a test bed. So in the past, it was, hey, if you don't want to swim, but you still want to do cool shit, go TACP. But I think it's looking like TACPs are going to have to swim now as well.
It's better. I think going through SWAS would be better for us. It just would be.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
I think I would love, even if there's not the unity, like the idea of a numbered airport, even if we just kind of keep it the way it is. But like, I feel like once you go through like a no shit selection, like at that point, then it just kind of raises the stakes of everything. Like the work to get there, and like there's a level of professionalism that comes with having to suffer through all of that.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a shared community suck that just, it bonds you. It absolutely does.
Excellent. I have an interesting question because I get it a lot, and I have given a ton of answers, but I would love to hear your perspective and let everyone know what JTAC. What is your experience of CCT versus TACP? Like, how would, it's kind of broad and kind of vague, but like, how would you kind of talk about like the similarities, the differences, those kinds of things?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, CCT are better JTACs. I mean, that's just the way it is. Now, I separate it into, at least in terms of ease of understanding, I separate CCT and soft TACPs are really good at counterinsurgency CAS or close air support. So COIN is what it's normally known as, and it is a very dynamic, very fast paced. Some of the procedures they're solid, but can be a little bit looser or omitted, and that sounds really bad. But I just mean like it is rare that a CCT or a soft TACP is going to say, actually give an IP heading and distance. Like here's a no kidding heading. Usually we'll do keyhole cast where we go, hey, I need you at Echo 7. You don't cross anywhere closer than 7 nautical miles until I tell you. Or, and then it is, 1 through 3 NA or from the wheel or whatever it happens to be, and whereas your conventional TACPs are more of LISCO, as in large scale combat operations. So think mechanized infantry, armor, airborne division, mountains, that kind of stuff, where there are massive amounts of friendly movements on a huge battlefield. And we're talking, the whole area is like 1/50 maps kind of thing, and they're controlling all of that. And then there's a FLA and a FIBA and a FISL. Man, I really set myself up for that, because now I'm going to start to try and think of what those were: fire support control line, 4 line of troops, and then FIBA. What is that? There you go. Thank you. So,
that's what that is, right?
Right. So, like, we don't deal with that kind of stuff. We don't deal with flots and FIBAs and FISLs, right? We deal with RASs. It's a small space, whereas you guys are are controlling high decks and stuff like that, you know? So, it's a larger scale operation that your conventional TACPs are controlling. And that's what we saw out here at the weapons school is whenever we would set up scenarios and training events, our controllers and their SATTAC-P would just like they didn't even have to think about the coin missions, but they would get crushed whenever we would cross flow them to do a LISCO mission, and vice versa. The conventional TAC-P when they would do coin, they would struggle to be as dynamic and like, hey, it's fast, it is quick, and the controllers on the LISCO side were just like, wait a minute, I've got how much to deal with? I've got to battle track these tanks, these armored vehicles, and it was a struggle. So it's good to see.
That was we were actually talking about it with we have a bunch of 13 Foxtrot Army guys in the server, and someone asked like kind of in the same thing. Well, what's a 13 Fox compared to a JTAC? And like having the discussion there. And one of the Army guys was like, well, you know, and then I had to say, well, no, I can do all of your call for fires that you do. Like we're expected to know how to do all those things, but then I also have to, you know, add it into, and then like, you know, the same things you were going into, like time over target planning, like TOT stuff. Like that is like a conventional TACP bread and butter.
Yeah,
that is so complex, but like there's not a lot of room for flexibility in it unless until you get to the point where you're actually doing it. But even then, it can harm because of golden bullets, all those kinds of things. So
yeah, and like so you throw that in there, right? Integration of artillery and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy for you guys. We've got to think about that a lot more. But you know, this last class we had a dude under canopy passing 9 lines, like he and a free fall. He did a HAMO, a high altitude medium opening. So I think he opened right around 6,000 or 7,000 and he's generating 9 lines and passing them to a 4 ship of A10s under canopy. And it was just like, this is incredible that this guy's doing this. And the funniest thing about it is we get back, right, and we're debriefing, and everybody knows if you're not tracking, the weapons school is big on debriefs. Like it's known, and it's good and it's bad, right? But kind of at the end of it, you know, he had messed 1 or 2 things up, right? And the instructor at the end goes, all right, man, well, how do you think you did? Do you think you passed this ride? And he's kind of stops for a second. He's like, there is no one else on Nellis Air Force Base right now that can do what I just did. So yeah, I think I passed that. it was the most like just big balls baller thing. It was like, yeah, dude, you're probably not wrong. Like you probably are the only dude on Nellis right now that could do what you just did. So right on, man. You passed.
All right, so we have about 10 minutes left, Peach. I only schedule these for about an hour because we want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, man.
But I always, you know, it's kind of the same thing that you guys do, but we always ask anyone from our Q&As to kind of give just like a, you know, kind of broad advice. You know, what guys, you know this audience just as well as we do. What is your, you know, within a 10-minute span, what's your best advice for the Bubbas going in?
Okay. Well, the funny thing is I was on with a SEAL a couple weeks ago, and he was like, I don't like that whole just don't quit kind of thing. But that is reality of it, is you can't quit. But if you're going to train, there's kind of this misconception, and I posted a story about it from Modern Athlete Shrink Systems, and really it was because Taylor Starch was talking about it, and he's like, hey, you know that the average person trains for 4 hours a week, like, and that there are people that are showing up to the pipeline training only 4 hours a week. And he goes, you are training for the most difficult pipeline in the DoD, and you think that you're going to be able to pass it with only 4 hours of training a week? You've got to at least double it. And so I posted that story yesterday, and I can't believe how many people responded. And they're like, hey, listen, I'm going to school, college. I work so that I can pay for college, and I still train around 12 hours a week. So there's no excuse. And I don't think that you can understand how difficult, not you in particular, but just people can understand how difficult this pipeline is and how much you were going to get tested. If we say 80% mental, 20% physical, and if I can be the most physically fit I can possibly be, then that's 20% that I don't have to worry about. And I can focus on that 80% because there are going to be times where you are not feeling the best. If you're 17, 18, like I was, like, man, I was really, really homesick. And so I was dealing with that, and I'm not alone. There's a lot of people that are homesick, going through basic training or going through SWATs right now. And there's going to be dark times. There's going to be times where you're like, dude, is this worth it? So 100% it is worth it. You just got to put in the work. You got to, when it gets hard, think about why you're there. And I know it's easy to go, hey, find your why, right? But it's tough when you're that young and you're going through it and you're getting your nuts kicked in, man. It's tough to go like, what's my why? But just, sometimes, I shame myself. Sometimes I'm like, dude, you got this, you're crushing it. And so that kind of fluctuates, and maybe you find what works for you. And maybe it's just like me, you fluctuate. Sometimes you're giving yourself pats on the back. Sometimes you're just talking mad shit to yourself, and you just figure it out at time. And, if you have a family or you have kids that you're separating yourselves from to go through the pipeline, or even your parents, right? Think about, like, when you're in that dark spot, think about, man, if I quit, I've got to go back and I've got to tell everybody why I'm not putting a beret on in 2 years. I got to go back and go, yeah, man, I quit. And dude, this as well as I do. There are dudes that even, whether they wanted to be TACP, CCT, PJ, SR, you'll meet them down the road and go, oh man, yeah, wanted to, but the old knee, just I couldn't do it. And you're like, man, I would not want to be that guy. Like, if I quit something, dude, I quit it, right? I don't want to be that person. I don't want to have to go back and tell my family or my friends, like, yeah, dude, I quit, man. Like, it's not in me to do that. So I don't even think that was good advice there, Whiskey.
I think that was great advice, man. I think that was great advice. I think it's real, right? Because it's like, it's easy to say these things, right? But like, it impacts you. Like, I have a guy here, he works at the university with me, and his son went to the Air Force to try and be a J, and he quit. And I asked him a couple months later, I'm like, hey man, how'd your boy do and everything? And he felt that shame of like, well, and he didn't, like, it carries.
Yeah.
Like, do you like that? I mean, of all, like, I am the case study of perseverance through failure in an aspect war pipeline, right? I went through one almost to the end and one all the way to the end, but I didn't quit. Right? Like, that's my big thing, is like, I can still say that I didn't quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I failed, but I didn't quit.
Right. And that is absolutely saying something. Because it's different. It's one thing to fail. Like, dude, I failed, man. Like, I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't get those last pull-ups or those last push-ups or whatever it was, right? But it's a whole nother thing to go, yeah, man, when it got hard and I was in a dark space, like, I'm not, taking it lightly, but yeah, I quit, and that burns with people. And you could see it in their face as soon as they say it, and they have to get out of the pool, and their buddies are still in the pool, just getting worked. And you could see immediately it's relief that they're no longer in the pool, but at the same time, they're like, oh shit, what did I just do? It's yeah.
Worse is the guys who quit and then the event ends.
Yeah. So Aaron tells a really good story about one of his NDOC classes, and they were just, it was, Aaron notoriously says that his NDOC class was just a terrible class of cones, right? And they were always getting in trouble. And I guess one day they were at the pool, and one of the cadre goes, all right, I want you guys to count off by twos. And this was after the pool session, like, right? So our normal pool sessions are 4 hours, and then you kind of go on to the next event. So at the end of the pool session, he's like, all right, everybody count off by twos, and not knowing what's going to happen. And I guess 2 or 3 of the guys were just like, nope, I'm good. I'm quitting. And the cadre is kind of shocked. And he goes, well, guys, you don't even know what we're going to do. And they're like, doesn't matter. I'm out, you know? And then they go into the locker room and they go change. And as they come out, the whole team is playing, I don't know what Aaron called it, but I grew up calling it sharks and minnows, right? Mm-hmm. So yep. A fun game, a challenging game, right? It gets you a good workout, but it's just something to blow off some steam, and it's fun. And the guys came out and realized that they quit before they even got into it, and it, you could tell just like, oh my God, you know, and I bet they still regret that to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do see one question in here that I'll answer real quick from light skinned Keith Sweat, which don't get it twisted. What is the best STS to go to for new controllers showing up to a team for more TDY opportunities? Each one of those units, well, one, you're not going to get a choice more than likely, right? You'll put in where you'd like to go and hopefully you get where you want to go. But you know, if the class before you, a lot of them went to the 23rd at Herbie, but we just had a lot of people PCS from McCord, then you'll probably end up going to McCord. So you don't necessarily get a choice. You can put in what you want and request it, but you may not get a choice. But all of the units go TDY and deploy, so you don't have to worry about missing out if that's what you're worried about.
If you're getting into one of these career fields, you're going to spend a lot of time on the road.
Yep.
I mean, I think. So I was in Italy from 02 to 06. And I think the most time I spent in my apartment every year was maybe 3 months. So.
Yeah, it's, you're on the road a lot. Whiskey, dude, before we hop off, I just want to hit all these questions real quick, man. I'm just flowing through it. So, Peaches, what courses, schools do you recommend for guys to become better as controllers as well as more versatile assets? None. Don't go to any other courses. And the reason why is because we want to train you how we need you to be. I would rather you be a blank slate and not have and a blank slate, and I can teach you what I need to teach you and how I need to teach you, instead of me following up behind somebody and fixing training scars that you happen to have. And then Aaron Love Hate Club, the June event, going to be before or after the 20th. I think we are targeting, let me see, we're talking about June 21st and 22nd, I think is what we're looking at. It hadn't been set in stone yet, but that's what we're looking at. And I think it might end up being San Diego. Oh, let's see. What else we got here, man? Dude, these are awesome. These are fun.
Yeah, this is great because it's a little bit less formal than like guys coming on to see you guys, so we can say shit and fuck. It's not a big deal. So
yeah.
Recording your channel, so
that's all right. We're past the AI doesn't, apparently their algorithm doesn't check this far into the recording. So
awesome. But yeah, so like I usually when we do these, I usually pour myself a drink and we just have a conversation. And depending on who it is, we've had a lot of real good ones. Last month we had Courtney James and another SEER specialist on, and that one was really good. We had guys from the Ranger unit come on and chat. So like
that's awesome.
Good stuff.
So let me. I'll bounce off here in a second, just because we're packing and we're heading out of town early tomorrow morning. But thanks to you and the rest of the Discord folks for being an awesome location for people to go to have chats, to get advice, to get information and engage with each other. And like I've seen some really good and healthy discussions, and like theoretical discussions, and then also like, hey man, stop being an idiot kind of thing. Like you're not in a mean way, but just like, hey man, you're overthinking it, dude. You know. So I do appreciate everything that you're doing to continue to mentor everybody that's in here, and then everybody else that decides to hop on, support the channel, support ONESREADY and everything that we're doing. So we really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, it was. I was lucky to be like searching for aspect war stuff when you guys' trailer popped on, because I'd been so removed from the community that I was trying to get back in, and like so I've been a ride or die since day one. So like I'm here for it, like trying to help. So like it's been awesome. So I'm really glad that we can take a part of it.
Absolutely. So in the future, we'll try and schedule another one of these with me, or maybe we'll get Aaron and Trent on, because in hold on, I'm going to do this while Aaron's on here. Actually, Aaron is one of the most um, articulate and intelligent and empathetical instructors you are ever going to see. If you come to one of the events, you will see Aaron out on a different thing. Like, everybody thinks that they know him because he's sarcastic and brash and that kind of stuff, right? But I saw him this weekend or 2 weekends ago take a group of it was probably 15 people in the pool, and he is able to articulate down to the lowest level and then take it all the way up to the highest level in a matter of seconds and talk people through um, underwater stuff, being efficient with the right amount of sarcasm, by the way, which is hilarious. And we also have him teach the attributes academics during these events. And I recorded him this last time, at least his audio. So I'm going to put his audio over some other stock footage that we have. But he spends 30 minutes crushing an attributes academics class for these folks. And so I just want to give it, like, he hates it when I do this, but I always force him to, like, you know how people are like, oh man, it's all good. I don't want to take compliment. Like, Aaron, this is a gift. Accept my gift. You're an awesome instructor. Okay.
Awesome. I had never had any doubt that he wasn't. So sweet. Peaches, as always, thank you so much for this, dude. This was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. When you guys do Denver, let me know as soon as you can so I can make plans to get over there. And then I will come and I want to take part of one of those.
Sounds good.
So that'd be really awesome.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, thanks again, man. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thanks again, Peaches.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.